The United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military, police, to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death.
Woo! That was Donald Trump. Yes, some of you may die, but that's a chance I'm willing to take. Yes, that is our El Presidente, the 34-time felon. I'm only belling with the 34-time felons. Donald John Trump. I guess he's probably not really our president. I think Netanyahu is actually our president, but that's neither here nor there. Yes, the United States struck Israel last Friday and Saturday, triggering the largest direct military conflict between Iran and the United States / Israel in many decades. Many decades. On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched coordinated air and missile strikes across Iran, beginning what many are calling the 2026 Iran War. Good Lord help us all. The campaign reportedly has 2 names: Operation Roaring Lion, that's what Israel's calling it, and America's calling it Operation Epic Fury. A lot of people are calling it Operation Epstein Fury. Because the belief is that much of this is being done to cover up the Epstein files. The main stated justifications of this is supposedly to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program. Now, if you remember, Donald Trump just last year bragged about how we completely destroyed Iran's nuclear weapon program. And just a few months ago, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, said that Iran did not have any nuclear capabilities. So were you lying then or are you lying now? The world may never know. Also, they wanted to degrade their ballistic missile capabilities and weaken Iran's regional proxy networks like Hezbollah. Here we go, loop-de-loo. Here we go, Hezbollah. And other militias like the Houthis. Israel knows this is their last chance, and I think that's a big part of the reason why this is happening. Donald Trump is the only person who is compromised morally, financially enough to have done something. Even George W. Bush would not do this. Obama would not do this. And those dudes bombed everything. They bombed everybody. Well, at least Obama did. Biden wasn't stupid enough to do this. This is literally the most ridiculous thing an American president has done in memory. I have to remind you guys, Iran is not Iraq, folks. Iran has 90 million people. Iran has been preparing for some level of this for 5 decades almost. And so this is not going to be a cakewalk. I know the corporate media is presenting that this is going to be a cakewalk to everybody. That is not going to be the case, folks. That is definitely not going to be the case. But again, Israel knows that this is their last chance, and Donald Trump is the sucker who would be willing to do this and really take the chances that we're already seeing a regional breakout of war all over Qatar and Dubai, all these other places. But we're seeing massive blowback from this all around the region. We've already had troops killed. But again, Israel knows that they've lost the American public. They know that for the first time in history, more Americans sympathize with Palestinians than the Israelis. They know how hated they are. They know they're a pariah state in the world. Everywhere they go, all over Europe, Asia, Middle East, Israel and Israeli citizens are pariahs. And they know that they have to do this now, or they will never get the opportunity again, because the world hates them. The world hates them and sees them for what they are, a genocidal apartheid state. And also, again, you can't neglect to bring up the Epstein files. Like, something in those files has spooked Donald Trump. We just, while this was all going on, the Department of Justice deleted 65,000 files in the Epstein files over the last week. 65,000 files are missing. So not only does this serve as a distraction, I think it's pretty safe to say that Israel definitely has access to some of what is in those files, considering that Jeffrey Epstein worked on Israel's behalf a lot. We're already seeing his girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Look how afraid and squirrely Donald Trump is about her, wishing her all the best. The woman's a convicted child sex trafficker. And Trump wishes her the best. He'll wish destruction on just about anybody. But when you talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, who literally abused children, then all of a sudden, yeah, I wish her all the best. And so what he's done is he moved her to a club-fed prison. Now, she's a convicted sex trafficker. I have to say that again. She is a convicted of a sex crime. She should be serving hard time in a real prison. She's in a club-fed prison that Donald Trump moved her into. And then there's also the nature of BRICS, the matter of BRICS. Not just Donald Trump, but a lot of the neoliberal elites who have been running this country have been scared of the BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Iran was another one of those countries that was that was working with the BRICS countries, working with Russia and India and China to circumvent the American dollar. And BRICS was already trying to roll out their own currency in a few years, getting prepared. And Iran and their oil and their power on the global stage was a big part of helping China and Russia be able to get the upper hand on the United States. So you can't ignore that. A lot of the neocons wanted to go to war with Iran about that. Same reason that we stole Venezuela's oil. It's no coincidence that we stole Venezuela's oil and now we're about to steal Iran's oil, because both were dealing with China, both were dealing with Russia. Both were helping the BRICS financial order be established. And so here we are. So many critics, including UN investigators and international leaders, have argued that these attacks violate international law and resemble a preemptive war. So, Trump now is at war with the Spanish. The Spaniards he's mad at the Spaniards. And so this is what, after the Spanish prime minister condemned what's going on, this is what Trump had to say about that.
It started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases, and that's all right. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they would have agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain.
Well, we are trying to convince Spain to catch up with the 3% or 3.5%, which we agreed on in NATO. And as the President said, it's correct. Spain is the only one who is not willing to accept that. And we are trying to convince them that this is a part of our common security, that we all have to comply with these numbers, and this is 3.5 for military and another 1.5 for our military infrastructure. So Spain has to comply with that.
By the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him, and it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
So that is Donald Trump threatening allies, members of NATO, because they don't want to go along with this illegal preemptive war that had absolutely nothing to do with the interest of the American people. Marco Rubio Marco Rubio was the first person to slip up in the Trump administration. He actually let the cat out of the bag as to why we're doing this at the beginning of the war. Most of the time you don't see public faces of warmongering admit what actually happened.
The United States conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their Navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond and respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact it bared to be true, because in fact within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned.
So that's Marco Rubio admitting that the reason that we had to do this is because Israel was going to strike Iran, whether we liked it or not. Now, mind you, Israel does not exist without us. Israel can't bomb or do anything without us. We provide virtually everything, all their protection, all their weapons. We provide them with that. So instead of saying, no, Israel, you don't get to do that, we preemptively attacked Iran because Iran was going to attack us after Israel attacked them. What? I'm just saying, whatever's in those Epstein files, whatever they have on Donald Trump. I remember for a decade, you know, white liberals and the colored people who love them went on and on about Russia. Oh, Russia's blackmailing Trump. Oh, Russia's black. Dude, Israel. It's always been Israel. It will always be Israel. Russia was a red herring because they wanted to do this. They wanted to start a war with Russia over Ukraine. They wanted an excuse to go in and murder as many Iranians and Venezuelans. And now Trump is turning his ire to Cuba, who's never done anything to us. Whatsoever. And so instead of doing what Ronald Reagan did, Ronald Reagan in 1982, when Menachem Begin was bombing Lebanon and they were killing a bunch of innocent civilians, Ronald Reagan called Menachem Begin and said, cut it the hell out. And within 40 minutes, he did it. Now, I'm no fan of Reagan. If you're a regular viewer of the show or a listener of the show, you know I've done, you know, a history's greatest monster segment on old Ronnie Boy. But what he wasn't was a complete cuck to Israel like Donald Trump. Whatever Israel has on Donald Trump and other people in our government, it must be beyond horrific. To allow them to get us involved in what could be the most disastrous foreign policy decision maybe in our history. If you can think of a worse foreign policy disaster than could come from this war in Iran, I can't think of it. Whatever Israel has on Trump must be more than horrific. It must be, you know, completely destroying and catastrophic. They also wanted to stop China's Belt and Road Initiative. Iran was a big part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. And it's important to note that Donald Trump officially has become the first president to bomb 8 countries in 1 year. 1 year. Donald Trump has bombed 8 countries, including, and now I think 9 with Ecuador. There's some dispute over whether we just bombed Ecuador or not. I was going to talk about that, but I need to figure out if we officially bombed Ecuador or not. Like, what the hell is going on? Serious. The most dramatic event of this entire thing was obviously the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has been Iran's supreme leader since 1989. Good God, man. The strike on the 28th of February was designed to decapitate Iran's leadership and destabilize the regime. Now his son is in charge. They actually killed the guy that was going to replace Ayatollah Khamenei as well. So now his son has been, who's a much younger man, has been elected, I guess, by the council or whatever they have to decide those things, to replace his father. And again, he's much younger. And I want you guys to understand, Ayatollah Khamenei, not Khomeini, but Khamenei, the one they just killed, was a moderate. This man was a moderate. He didn't want Iran to create nuclear weapons. He was fighting against people within, the hardliners within Iran, against nuclear weapons, because he said they're not haram. They are against Islam. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was friends with Thomas Sankara. Ayatollah Khamenei named a street after Patrice Lumumba. A few years ago, they paid tribute to Malcolm X on the assassination of his death. Khamenei was somebody who was very moderate, had a very, for Iran, had a very moderate point of view in comparison to some of those hardliners who never wanted to negotiate with the United States because they know what snakes our government is and because they know what snakes Israel are. And now, who do you think is going to come to power in Iran now? Oh boy, if you thought they were screaming death to America in the streets of Tehran before, oh, just wait. And not only in Iran, this has completely lit a match and sparked a flame all over the region. There are huge Shia populations in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in United Arab Emirates. We just saw Dubai, which was always sold itself as a haven that kept people safe from crap like this. Dubai has been bombed. In Pakistan, all these places, they saw him as a religious figure, and as a religious figure because he was a grand Ayatollah. This is, like I said, maybe the worst foreign policy decision an American president has ever made. And I can't even imagine how the United States gets out of this without a lot of damage. They've already struck several Iranian cities and facilities in Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karash, Kermanshah. They targeted IRGC bases, missile sites, nuclear-related infrastructure, government buildings. We are currently spending. We've currently spent $7 billion. Let me look at the tally right quick because there's actually a website called IranCostTicker.com. Currently, since February 28th, we have spent $6,860,000,000. $6,860,000,000. So about $7 billion over the last week. And now, mind you, these are the people who tell you we can't afford universal health care. These are the people who tell you we can't afford universal health education, which many other countries have already. Other countries do this stuff regularly. These are people who are cutting welfare benefits, who are cutting health benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, but they have $7 billion to spend in a week in a war that is obviously not going to be over anytime soon. We will probably end up spending $100 billion at least in Iran in over the next year or so, at least. And that's if we get out somehow. That is how we get, if we get out somehow, we will spend $100 billion. We've already spent $200 billion in Ukraine. These same cast of characters, the neocons. One of the justifications for this was, well, we got to liberate women in Iran. We got to liberate the women of Iran, everybody. Well, guess what? We just struck a school in Manab where 180 girls were killed in an airstrike. The United Nations has called the strike shocking and has opened an investigation. There's already been blowback. Israel has been hit multiple times. We don't know how many people in Israel killed because the media is not being allowed to report on how many people are killed in Israel. There have been Gulf bases, U.S. Gulf bases. We just know 6 people have been killed, Americans. There's been targets in the United Arab Emirates, in Qatar, in Bahrain. The Brits have been hit. Obviously, we've been hit. This is, Hezbollah. Here we go, loop-de-loo. Here we go, Hezbollah. Has already struck Israel. So Israel has started bombing southern Lebanon. There's been missile strikes in Iraq and in the Kurdistan regions. Like, this is this is turning into extreme chaos in the Middle East, which is what Israel wants. Israel has wanted this for many years. Benjamin Netanyahu just went on TV in Israel and bragged about how for 40 years he's pushed for this, and now he's finally got it. He is a hero in Israel for basically destroying the Middle East. And let me just say this as well. Donald Trump thinks that the Iranians are going to want to do a deal with him because everything is about making a deal with him. Dude, the Iranian theocracy fears at this point, after Khamenei's been murdered, assassinated, they actually fear giving up and making a deal with the United States is worse than fighting to the death. They cannot go back at this point, especially with the moderate voice of Khamenei gone now after being assassinated. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz because the insurers can't insure the cargo that goes through there. Guess what? A quarter of the world's oil goes through there. A quarter of the world's oil. So be prepared to pay a lot more for gas. We're already up, I think, 80 cents here. $20 to 25% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. This is the level of disruption we saw during the Ukraine war. Remember when we were paying $5 and $6 for gas at the beginning of the Ukraine war? Well, I got some good news for you. Be prepared to take it out of your behind again. The Houthis from Yemen have joined the fight. Hezbollah has joined the fight. They have $20,000 to $30,000 drones that they can mass produce and essentially wear out America's and Israel's defense systems. Qatar Energy has now stopped all the liquid gas production. If they shut down production, that is 20% of the global output. Qatar Energy is the world's largest liquid natural gas producer. And so, of course, the European markets spiked 50% for liquefied natural gas, indicating that they may have to actually buy gas from Russia again, which will only make Russia richer, which will only help them in the war against Ukraine that we're supposed to be helping them in as well. And so we just today gave India a 30-day Russian oil waiver. So we're going to allow India to buy oil from Russia and again help them get richer. This is incredible. This is incredible. Oil markets are currently headed at least a 10% spike, and you could end up seeing $100 a barrel. Again, be prepared to pay a lot more for gas and food in the interim. I'm going shopping tomorrow. I'm gonna try to do what I can do. And so the people who are doing this are incredibly reckless. We talk about the religious fundamentalists, the zealots in Iran. Well, here in America, over 100 ethics complaints have been filed against a U.S. commander for telling the officers in a briefing that the Iran war is a part of God's plan, and Trump was anointed by Jesus to cause Armageddon and mark Jesus' return to earth. That is some of the psychos you have in our military who are going to be calling the shots. And finally, before I go to a break, because it's 6:45, folks, it's important to remember that in the year 2000, there were 9 countries without a Rothschild-owned bank. A Rothschild-controlled central bank. They were Iran, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, Afghanistan, Syria, and Venezuela. And for the record, we have bombed Iran, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Afghanistan, Syria, and Venezuela. So we bombed 7 of the 9 countries. And we're about to go into Cuba right now. And the only reason we haven't gone into North Korea is because they do have nuclear weapons. And we are afraid of that, as we should be. Woo. All for the Gusano and let me just say this as well before I go to break. I know I got to go to break. The Gusano Industrial Complex. All these Iranians and Cubans and Venezuelans who find their way into this country and start demanding that the United States overthrows their government, their home country. These are some of the most despicable, disgusting people on the planet. If you hate the Iranian government so much, leave Beverly Hills in LA and go fight Ayatollah. But to come here and to essentially use the American army as your personal kill squad that is supposed to settle your scores back in the old country, that is disgusting. I'm absolutely sickened by the LA Persians, Reza Pahlavi, who's now angling to be put in charge by Trump and these people. This dude's been in Maryland for the last 50 years, ever since his father was kicked out of power. Like, seriously, I don't even know if this dude's ever had a real job ever in his life. Like, go to hell, bro. Seriously. Like all of these, the Gusanos, the Cubans, the Venezuelans, the Persians who come to this country and demand we fight their battles for them, we should be kicking them out of the country. More so than any Mexican or Guatemalan who just wants to make a living. All right, folks. All right, folks. When we get back, the end of sister girl politics, the end of Yas Queen politics. Let's talk about it. That number is 219-885-1371. The number again, 219-885-1371.